You think you can just walk in here and touch a $10,000 jacket? The manager's voice cracked across the marble showroom like thunder. People like you don't shop here, you steal here. A hush fell over the store. The man he was yelling at didn't move. David Cole just looked at him, calm, steady, unreadable. Is that your final assumption, he asked quietly, or just your favorite one? The tension was electric. Every eye in the boutique turned toward them. Even the background music seemed to stop. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to David. He had walked into Cole & Ryder's flagship store wearing nothing but a black jacket and a worn cap. No entourage, no designer flash, just quiet intent. He wasn't here to shop, he was here to test something. The manager, Todd, had decided within seconds that David didn't belong. His polished shoes clicked against the marble as he followed him through the racks, pretending to straighten hangers but keeping close like a shadow of suspicion. "Sir, I'll have to ask you to leave," Todd said finally, stepping in front of him. David looked up, eyes steady. "I'm not finished yet." "You are now," Todd shot back, smirking. "Before I call security." The sales associate nearby froze. A young woman, nervous, her voice barely a whisper. Todd, his card just scanned green. He ignored her. "We've had scams before. Looks real until the police get here." David exhaled slowly, that calm before the storm kind of silence that feels heavier than shouting. He'd been here before, not in this store, but in this moment, this pattern. Years ago, same look, same accusation, same air of entitlement wrapped in politeness. Only this time, the cameras were his witnesses. He glanced up at one, adjusted his collar slightly, and said under his breath, "Let it record." Todd snapped. "What did you say?" David's phone buzzed once in his pocket. Carla's voice in his ear through a small earpiece. "Everything's set, sir. The board meets tomorrow at 9 a.m. "Perfect timing," David murmured. Todd frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" David finally turned to face him fully. "It means," he said, his voice low, smooth as steel, "you're about to learn who's really trespassing." The guard arrived then, broad, uncertain, caught between orders and intuition. "Problem here?" he asked. Todd didn't hesitate. "Yes, this man's not a client." The guard's gaze shifted to David, then back to Todd. Something in the balance of power had shifted. David's calm was unnerving. "Are you sure about that?" the guard asked. Todd scoffed. "I'm the manager. Of course I'm sure." David smiled faintly, eyes locked on him. Not for long. Silence again, that heavy kind. The kind that warns everyone watching that something big is about to turn. Because what Todd didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that by tomorrow morning, David Cole would own the store, the brand, and every inch of ground Todd was standing on. The guard's hand hovered near his radio as Todd's tone sharpened. "You heard me," he said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "You either leave now or I will make you leave." David did not move. The marble beneath his shoes reflected the calm he carried, the stillness that came from years of being underestimated. He spoke slowly, each word measured, deliberate. "You do not need to make me leave," he said. "You need to learn why I am here." The manager scoffed. "Oh, this should be good. Enlighten me." The young associate near the register, her hands trembling slightly, whispered again. "Todd," his card scanned green. "It is valid." Todd turned sharply toward her. "Do not interrupt me again." She flinched. The guard looked uneasy, shifting his weight. The atmosphere inside the store had changed. What had begun as arrogance was now something heavier, fear disguised as control. David reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He did not raise his voice. "Carla," he said evenly, "we will need to move the signing up." The voice on the other end came clear and calm. "Understood, sir. The documents are ready." "Do you want me to notify the board?" Todd frowned, crossing his arms. "Oh, what is this? You have got your little assistant pretending to take notes for you?" "That is cute." David's eyes lifted, steady and unwavering. "No," he said softly. "What is cute is how you believe you are in charge of this room." A murmur rippled through the customers standing nearby. One of them, a woman in a beige trench coat, whispered, "He sounds serious." Another man pulled out his phone and started recording quietly. The guard cleared his throat. "Sir," he said to David, "maybe it is best if you step outside until we sort this out." David's reply was calm but firm. "No one sorts me out. I sort systems out." The words hung heavy, confusing Todd, but not the audience forming around them. Then, with perfect timing, the glass doors of the boutique slid open, and 3 people walked in wearing dark suits and lanyards bearing the Cole Enterprises insignia. The lead woman spoke first, her voice crisp. "Mr. Cole, the review team has arrived. The acquisition documents are being transferred as we speak." The room went still. Todd's smirk faltered. "Wait, what did you just call him?" The woman did not even look at him. "Mr. Cole, owner of Cole Enterprises. Effective tomorrow, this location becomes part of our holdings." Every shopper froze, every whisper stopped. The guard blinked twice, stepping back. Todd's lips parted, but no words came out. "You cannot be serious," he finally stammered. "You mean this store?" David turned to him, voice still even but colder now. "Yes, the same store where you decided I was not good enough to shop. The same store where you called security instead of showing respect." The woman from the review team placed a folder on the counter. The letterhead gleamed under the lights, Cole Enterprises. "Signed and finalized," she said. "Congratulations, Mr. Cole." Todd's face lost all color. The young associate who had tried to speak earlier looked on, her mouth slightly open in disbelief. David looked at her and nodded once, a quiet acknowledgement of courage. Then he turned back to Todd. "You wanted to know why I was here," he said. "Now you do. I came to see how this place treated people before I decided to buy it." The silence that followed was total. Even the hum of the air conditioner seemed to fade. David's phone buzzed once more. Carla's voice was steady. "Everything is cleared, sir. You now have full operational authority." David looked at Todd one last time. "You said people like me steal. You were right about one thing. I am taking something from you. Your job." He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The truth spoke louder than anger. Todd tried to respond, but all that came out was a faint, broken sound, the sound of power collapsing in real time. For a long moment, no one in the store moved. The marble floor reflected the weight of the silence like glass holding tension. Todd stood frozen, his mouth still open, his face pale. The guard lowered his hand from the radio, uncertain of what to do. The young associate, her name tag reading Maya, finally spoke, her voice small but steady. "Mr. Cole," she said softly, "I am sorry. I tried to tell him." David turned toward her, his expression softening. "You did," he said, "and that matters." He glanced back at Todd, who was still trying to gather himself. "You can call security again if it makes you feel powerful," David said, "but this time they will be removing you." Todd stammered. "You cannot just walk in here and fire people. There are procedures." David's tone never changed. "I own the procedures now." Carla's voice came through his earpiece again, calm and efficient. "Sir, the legal department has completed the transition. You are authorized to execute on-site staffing changes." David nodded slightly. "Thank you, Carla. Let us make this official." He turned to Maya. "Please ask everyone to step back." She hesitated, then spoke firmly to the few remaining customers. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you could give us some space, please." They obeyed, sensing something historic was about to happen. The boutique that had been a stage for arrogance was now a courtroom of accountability. David took a step closer to Todd, who backed up until his polished shoes hit the counter. "You said I do not belong here," David began, his voice low but heavy. "You humiliated me in front of strangers, called security, and mocked my skin as proof of guilt. I did not respond because I did not need to. I do not need to prove anything to a man who measures worth by appearance." Todd tried to laugh, but it came out nervous, hollow. "You think this will go viral? That you can just ruin my career?" David tilted his head slightly. "You ruined it yourself. I am just letting the truth finish the job." Maya looked at David, her eyes wide, admiration hidden behind composure. "What do you want us to do, sir?" she asked. David's gaze remained on Todd. "Begin the termination protocol. Notify corporate compliance that I have dismissed the acting manager for discrimination and misconduct." Todd's voice cracked. "You are firing me?" David's reply was surgical. "No, I am documenting you. The firing happens automatically when the system syncs." He turned toward the review team, who had been quietly observing. "Confirm his access credentials are revoked immediately." The lead woman nodded and tapped her tablet. "Done. His employee ID is now inactive." The store's security alarm beeped faintly, signaling the change. Todd looked at his phone, disbelief washing over him as the device flashed, "Access denied." "This cannot be happening," he whispered. "It already did," David said. The moment you looked at me and saw less than human. Maya's eyes filled with tears. Sir, what happens now? David exhaled, his tone softening again. Now we start over. We rebuild this place with people who understand respect. The guard finally spoke, breaking his silence. Mr. Cole, he said quietly, I am sorry. I should have stopped it earlier. David nodded. Acknowledging it is the first step. Doing better is the second. Carla's voice returned through the earpiece. News has already reached headquarters. They support your decision fully. Would you like to address the team officially? David looked around at the staff, the customers, the faces still processing what they had just witnessed. Yes, he said. Everyone deserves to hear what this place will stand for now. He took a step toward the center of the room, his reflection clear in the glass cases surrounding him, the very ones he had been accused of not belonging near. You all saw what happened today, he said, voice strong but even, and it will never happen here again, not while my name is on the door. The applause that followed was quiet at first, then grew louder until it filled the entire boutique. For once the sound was not for luxury or wealth, it was for justice. The sound of applause slowly faded, leaving behind the steady hum of realization. The boutique that had once been a symbol of exclusion now stood suspended in an unfamiliar quiet. David Cole remained at the center of it, his calm presence commanding more gravity than any raised voice ever could. He looked around, taking in the faces, some ashamed, some inspired, some still unsure of what to believe. Before we move forward, David began, his voice carrying across the room, I need everyone to understand something. What happened here was not a mistake. It was a mindset. He turned toward Maya, who stood near the counter, her eyes glistening. How long have you worked here? 2 years, sir, she replied. And how many times have you seen something like this? She hesitated, then admitted, too many. David nodded slowly. Then today, that cycle ends. He gestured for the review team to join him. Document everything, he instructed. Every word, every action, every decision made in this room today will be filed for compliance and training purposes. The lead auditor confirmed. Recording has been live since we arrived. We will prepare a report. Todd, still standing near the door, looked lost. His authority had drained out of him completely. You cannot just destroy people's careers like this, he muttered. David turned to him, his tone calm but piercing. Destroying careers? You did that yourself when you weaponized someone's appearance. You forgot that every customer who walks through these doors deserves the same respect, no matter how much they look like money. A murmur of agreement came from the customers who had stayed. An older gentleman in a tan coat spoke up. About time someone said it out loud. David acknowledged him with a brief nod. It should not take ownership to earn humanity, he said quietly. Then he looked toward Maya again. You stood up when no one else did. That matters. From today, you are promoted to assistant floor manager, effective immediately. Maya froze, tears brimming in her eyes. Sir, I thank you. Do not thank me, David replied. Just promise me you will never stay silent when you see wrong again. I will not, she said firmly. The guard, still standing near the back, cleared his throat. Sir, do you want me to escort him out? He asked, nodding toward Todd. David shook his head. No, let him walk through what he built one last time. Todd lowered his head, shame heavy in his steps as he moved toward the exit. The customers stepped aside, not out of fear but quiet judgment. When he reached the door, David's voice stopped him. Before you go, he said, look around. Every mirror in this store reflects what you chose not to see. Todd paused, staring at his own reflection for a brief moment before pushing through the glass doors and disappearing into the city noise. The silence that followed was almost cleansing. David turned to the staff, who remained. From this moment forward, Cole and Ryder will represent something new, not just luxury, but dignity. Every person who walks in deserves to feel seen, not sized up. Carla's voice came through his earpiece again. Sir, local media has picked up the incident. They are requesting a statement. David glanced toward the cameras, still blinking quietly from the ceiling. They already have one, he said. They just watched it unfold. The review team began their cleanup, packing files and tablets, while Maya walked over, still trying to steady her breath. Mr. Cole, she said softly, people online are going to talk about this for days. David smiled faintly. Good, he said, because silence is how this kind of thing survives. It is about time people started talking. He turned toward the front windows, watching the sunlight spill across the marble floor. The reflection of his own face met his eyes, and for the first time that day, He let out a quiet exhale, not of anger but of purpose. "We rebuild from here," he murmured, "one truth at a time." The afternoon light began to fade, stretching long shadows across the boutique floor as the review team finalized their reports. The store was quieter now, but it was not the silence of tension anymore. It was the stillness that follows truth. David Cole stood near the front display, his reflection flickering in the glass as he watched the city traffic blur past. Behind him, employees whispered in small clusters, trying to process what had just happened. Maya approached carefully, holding a folder. "Mr. Cole," she said softly, "corporate compliance sent a note of confirmation. Everything you said and did here today has been verified." David turned to her. "Good. That means it is not just a story anymore. It is a record." He paused for a moment, letting that sentence settle in the air. Every time something like this happens and no one speaks up, the silence becomes policy. Today, we broke that silence. Maya nodded, her voice small. "Sir, I have worked here for 2 years. No one has ever spoken to us like this, not with honesty." David smiled faintly. "Honesty is not a speech, it is a standard." He glanced toward the back office, where a few remaining employees were packing up. "Gather, everyone," he said. "We are not done yet." Within minutes, the staff assembled near the counter, nervous, uncertain, but attentive. The review team stood by with tablets in hand. David stepped forward, resting his palms lightly on the marble surface. "I know this day has been heavy," he began, "but I need you all to hear this from me directly. What happened here was not about one man losing his job. It was about a culture that allowed him to think he could treat someone that way and get away with it." He looked at each of them as he spoke, his tone calm but unflinching. "You may not have been the one who said the words, but silence has weight. Every time you saw someone treated unfairly and said nothing, you added a brick to the wall that separated right from wrong." A few employees looked down, guilt heavy in their expressions. David continued, "That wall comes down today. Starting now, every store under my company's name will go through a full equity audit. No exceptions. If you have been part of the problem, speak now or step aside. But if you want to help build something better, stay. There is work to do." A murmur rippled through the room. One young man raised his hand hesitantly. "Sir, what happens to us now?" David met his eyes. "You get a choice. You can leave with excuses or you can stay with purpose. I do not care about perfection. I care about progress." Carla's voice came through the earpiece again. "Sir, headquarters just approved the statement. Do you want me to release it?" "Not yet," David said. "I will say it myself." He turned to the small group of customers who had remained, those who had witnessed the entire event unfold. "To those of you who stayed," he said, "thank you. You could have walked away when things got uncomfortable, but you did not. You stood in the truth with me, and that matters." The older gentleman in the tan coat spoke again. "Mr. Cole, this will make headlines." David gave a slow nod. "Let it. Headlines fade, but what we do next, that lasts." He turned toward Maya. "I want you to start a new initiative. Call it the Cole Standard. Every employee, from sales to management, will sign a pledge of dignity and equality. If they cannot stand by that, they cannot stand behind this counter." Maya smiled through her tears. "Yes, sir." David looked around the boutique one last time. The same lights that had once cast judgment now reflected change. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "this place opens under new ownership, but tonight it closes on an old way of thinking." The room remained still for a long moment. Then slowly, one by one, the staff began to clap. It was not applause for power. It was applause for something finally being set right. David exhaled softly, the weight lifting from his shoulders. "Justice," he said under his breath, "is not a moment. It is a movement." When the staff meeting concluded, the boutique felt like a different place entirely. The air that had been thick with shame and fear now carried something unfamiliar hope. David Cole walked slowly through the store, his shoes echoing against the marble as he passed the displays that once symbolized exclusivity. "It is strange," he said quietly to himself, "how luxury can look so small when dignity walks in." Carla's voice came through his earpiece again, steady and professional. "Sir, the press has been notified. Local news stations are preparing to run the footage from the in-store cameras. The full clip is already trending online." David stopped in front of the same counter where Todd had accused him hours earlier. "Let them run it," he said. "The world should see what silence looks like and what happens when it ends." Carla paused before responding. The board is proud of how you handled this, sir. They said no press statement could carry the impact of what people just witnessed. David gave a faint smile. That is the point, Carla. You cannot polish truth with PR. Behind him, Maya was reviewing paperwork with the review team. She approached cautiously. Mr. Cole, she said, a few employees are asking if they will still have jobs after the restructuring. David turned to face her. Those who stood by injustice cannot stay, but those who are willing to rebuild will always have a place here. Maya nodded, visibly relieved. Thank you, sir. It means a lot. David looked around the store, his eyes falling on the gold-lettered name Cole and Ryder above the entryway. Tomorrow, he said, those letters change. The Ryder name will come down, but not out of spite, out of evolution. Maya tilted her head. What will the new name be? David's voice was calm. Cole Atelier. Because from now on, we do not sell status. We shape character. Carla's voice returned through the earpiece. Sir, there is a small crowd gathering outside. Reporters, a few customers, and even some of the employees who left earlier. They are asking if you will make a public statement. David straightened his jacket. Then let us give them one worth remembering. He walked toward the front doors as the review team followed, adjusting their devices. The moment he stepped outside, the late-day sun hit him full in the face. Cameras clicked. Reporters raised microphones. The crowd parted slightly as David moved to the top of the steps. The murmuring stopped. My name is David Cole, he began, his tone even but powerful. I came here today as a customer and was treated like a suspect. That is not new. It happens to people who look like me every day in stores, in banks, in offices. But what is new is this. I own this company now, and under my leadership, this will never happen again. The crowd went quiet, captivated. Luxury means nothing without humanity, he continued. We will build a brand that reflects the world we live in, not the bias we hide behind. A reporter called out, Mr. Cole, do you think what happened today will change how other companies treat discrimination? David looked directly into the nearest camera. I do not hope it will, he said. I expect it to. The crowd erupted into applause, flashes of light reflecting off the glass facade of the store. David raised a hand, signaling for calm. This is not just my victory, he said. It belongs to every person who has ever been told they do not belong. Every worker who has stayed silent out of fear. Every manager who has chosen comfort over conscience. Change begins when one person refuses to look away. That is what today was. The applause swelled again, louder this time, spilling into the street. As David stepped back into the boutique, he turned once more to Maya. Tomorrow, he said, we open these doors not as a store but as a statement. Maya smiled through tears. I will be here early. David nodded. Good. Because this is just the beginning. He glanced one last time at the reflection in the glass, the same reflection that had once seen doubt and dismissal. Now it stared back at him with quiet power. We are rewriting the script, he said softly. And this time the ending belongs to us. The next morning, the storefront gleamed under the early light. But it wasn't just the polished glass and sleek displays that caught the eye. It was the sense of purpose hanging in the air. David Cole stood by the front windows, looking out at the city streets below, his reflection now a symbol of change. Maya walked up beside him, a clipboard in her hands, a sense of excitement and determination in her eyes. Everything is ready, Mr. Cole, she said, her voice steady. The Cole Atelier brand is live. We've updated the website, the social media pages, and we've sent out the new mission statement to all partners. David nodded, his eyes still fixed on the bustling city outside. Good, he said, his voice calm but resolute. But the real work begins today. He turned and faced her. The team will need to see what we're doing here today, not just hear about it. Maya nodded again, ready to execute the plan. The store was about to open its doors for the first time under its new name. David knew this was just a beginning, and he wasn't about to let anyone forget that. He walked over to the front desk, where a team of employees stood, waiting for his next move. They were all still processing the events of the previous day, unsure of what would come next. Good morning, David said, his voice carrying authority. Today we redefine this space. This is no longer just a boutique. This is a place where dignity is the currency, and everyone who walks through that door is treated with respect. The employees nodded, absorbing the gravity of his words. I expect each of you to bring your best self to work every day. No more biases, no more assumptions about who belongs and who does not. You all have the power to change the culture here. You are the culture now. Maya stepped forward, ready to introduce the new training materials that had been carefully crafted overnight. "We have a comprehensive training program in place," she said. "It includes unconscious bias training, customer service standards that focus on empathy, and mandatory team-building sessions. We're all in this together." David smiled slightly, looking at the faces around him. "I didn't buy this company for the brand. I bought it for the people. You're the foundation, and I'm counting on you to build something that lasts." Just as David finished speaking, the first customer of the day walked in, a middle-aged woman in a sharp red suit. David smiled, stepping forward to greet her personally. "Good morning, ma'am. Welcome to Cole Atelier," he said warmly. "How may I assist you today?" The woman, taken aback by the warmth of his greeting, paused for a moment before speaking. "I came by to see what all the fuss was about. I heard what happened here yesterday," she said, a smirk on her lips. "I wasn't sure what to expect." David met her gaze with a calm but intense look. "You came for a reason," he said. "And that reason isn't just to see the store, it's because you recognize change when it happens. You recognize that things are different now." The woman blinked, taken aback by the honesty in his words. David's eyes softened. "This is your opportunity to be part of that change, to be part of what this company stands for now. I'm not here to sell you a jacket, I'm here to invite you into something better." The woman's posture shifted as she took in his words, her earlier cynicism slowly melting away. "I think I'll take a look around," she said, her voice a little softer now. David watched her walk through the store, nodding to the employees as she passed. The moment felt like a small victory, a small shift in the dynamic of the store, in the dynamic of the world outside. But it wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. As the day went on, more customers filtered in, and each one was greeted with the same warmth, the same respect. The store that had once been a symbol of exclusion now stood as a beacon of change, a place where luxury didn't just mean expensive goods, it meant a commitment to fairness, respect, and dignity. David knew there was still a long road ahead. The work of dismantling systems of discrimination didn't happen overnight, but he was ready for it. And as he stood at the front of the store, watching customers come and go, he couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of pride. They had started something, and they would finish it. One customer, one employee, and one act of respect at a time. As the days went by, the changes that David Cole had set in motion continued to ripple through the store. The staff, now fully trained in the new standards, carried themselves with a newfound sense of purpose and pride. Customers who had once walked in with the weight of assumptions now entered with curiosity and respect. The store had become a living testament to the new vision David had for his brand, and it was only just beginning. One afternoon, David sat in his office, reviewing the first round of feedback from the new customer service initiatives. Maya walked in, her face lit with a mixture of pride and excitement. "Mr. Cole," she said, "the response has been overwhelming. Not only are customers noticing the difference, but we've already had multiple requests from potential partners who want to collaborate. They're all eager to align with the new Cole Atelier values." David leaned back in his chair, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "That's good to hear. We are not just changing the store, we are changing the entire industry. We're showing that business can be profitable and ethical." He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. "But Maya, we cannot stop here. We need to expand this message, spread it further. We need to make sure that what we're doing isn't just seen as a one-off. It has to be a movement." Maya nodded eagerly. "I completely agree. We've already set up meetings with several fashion organizations and influencers who want to get involved in the Cole standard. People are ready for this." "Then let's give them what they want," David said, his tone firm. "But we do it on our terms. We don't compromise on our values. If we're going to lead this charge, we have to do it right." The two of them began strategizing on how to take Cole Atelier to the next level. David knew that the battle for equality in the luxury industry was far from over. While the store's internal culture had shifted dramatically, the world outside still needed to catch up. The following week, David found himself sitting in a meeting with a major luxury brand. The representatives, all white men in their late 50s, sat across from him, their faces unreadable. David could feel their skepticism in the air, but he refused to let it faze him. "Gentlemen," David began, "I believe there is a shift happening in the world of high fashion, and Cole Atelier is leading it. We are changing what it means to be a luxury brand. It's not just about the clothes. It's about who we are and who we choose to serve." One of the men, An older executive with a silver beard scoffed. And you think this dignity-first approach is going to appeal to our customers? They want exclusivity, not lectures. David leaned forward, his voice calm but piercing. I disagree. People want to feel respected, not excluded. They want to know that the brands they support reflect their values. And in today's world, those values include fairness, respect, and equality. There was a brief silence as the men exchanged glances. Finally, the silver-bearded man spoke again, this time more cautiously. You make a strong case, Mr. Cole. But we've built our brand on exclusivity for decades. That's not easy to change. David smiled, the corners of his mouth lifting. Change is never easy, he said, but it is inevitable. The question is, do you want to lead that change or do you want to follow it? The room was quiet as the men considered his words. David knew it wasn't going to be a quick win, but it was a step in the right direction. That evening, as he walked through the store again, David reflected on how far they had come. It hadn't been easy, but they had made a statement. People were listening, and the momentum was building. He could feel the shift in the air, subtle but powerful. Maya was right. They were ready for this. As the store closed for the night, David stood by the window looking out at the city. The lights of the skyline shimmered in the distance, and for the first time in a long time, he felt that his work here was just beginning. The fight for equality, for respect, for change, it wasn't over yet. But it had started, and Cole Atelier would lead the way. We are rewriting history, David whispered to himself, the words hanging in the air, and we're just getting started. Weeks passed, and the success of Cole Atelier continued to spread. The press had picked up on David's vision, and soon, other luxury brands began to take notice. Despite the resistance he faced in meetings, David knew that the tide was turning. Slowly but surely, the culture within the fashion industry was beginning to shift. One afternoon, Maya walked into David's office, her face lit with excitement. Mr. Cole, she said, her voice almost breathless. We've just secured our first major partnership with a global fashion influencer. They want to feature Cole Atelier in their next campaign. David looked up from his desk, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. That's excellent news, Maya. What's the catch? She laughed, shaking her head. No catch. They're on board with our message. They believe in what we're doing. David leaned back in his chair, absorbing the weight of the moment. This is the beginning, he said quietly, almost to himself. We're not just changing a store, we're changing an industry. Maya's excitement faltered slightly, and she hesitated before speaking. There's something else, though, she said. A few of the other executives at the influencers agency are questioning our pricing structure. They believe it might be too high for the message we're sending. David's expression grew serious. Are they questioning the quality of our products, or the values we stand for? Maya paused before answering. It's the pricing, sir. They think we're sending mixed signals. That we can't be both a luxury brand and a dignity-first company. David nodded, his mind already processing the situation. Send them a message, Maya. Tell them we are exactly who we say we are. Our prices reflect the quality of our products, but they also reflect our commitment to the kind of world we want to create. If they want to partner with us, they need to understand that we are not compromising our values for anyone. Maya smiled, understanding the determination in his words. I'll get right on it, sir. As she left the office, David leaned back in his chair, his mind racing with the implications of this new challenge. He knew that the road ahead would not be without obstacles, but he was ready. As the world watched, Cole Atelier was becoming more than just a brand. It was becoming a movement, and David was prepared to lead it with unwavering resolve. He had built this company on the idea of dignity, and now that idea was spreading far beyond the walls of his store. He glanced out the window once more, watching the city go by. It was time for the next step. We are not just part of the industry anymore, he whispered to himself. We are the future of it. The partnership with the global influencer marked a major milestone for Cole Atelier, but with it came new challenges. David had known from the start that breaking into the luxury fashion world would require more than just a fresh perspective. It would require a complete transformation of the way things were done. That transformation, however, was never going to be easy. Late one evening, as David sat at his desk reviewing the latest round of campaign materials, Maya entered the room with a file in her hands. Mr. Cole, she began, her voice laced with concern, we've run into some issues with the campaign. The influencers team wants us to soften the language around our dignity-first approach. They're worried it will alienate their more traditional luxury market. David put down the papers he was reading and looked up at her, his expression calm but firm. They want us to water down our message? Maya nodded, her brow furrowed. They think it might be too political, too divisive for their high-end clientele. They want us to focus more on the luxury aspect and less on the cultural change we're advocating for. David sat back in his chair, his fingers steepled as he thought for a moment. He had known there would be pushback, but hearing it put so plainly made something inside him click. Maya, he said slowly, they do not get to define who we are or what we stand for. This is not about making a sale or playing to the elite few who have the privilege to turn a blind eye. This is about something bigger. He paused, meeting her gaze. We cannot compromise our message. If they are not willing to embrace the full scope of what Cole Atelier represents, then this partnership will not be the right fit. Maya looked at him, understanding the gravity of his words. I'll let them know, she said, her voice resolute. As Maya left the room, David took a deep breath, his thoughts turning to the future. He knew that the road ahead was filled with hurdles, resistance from industry giants, challenges in redefining an entire sector, but he had no intention of backing down. Cole Atelier was more than just a store. It was a revolution, and revolutions weren't built on compromise. It was the perfect moment for him to lean in even further. He couldn't afford to lose sight of the values that had gotten him this far. What he was creating here wasn't just a business, it was a blueprint for how businesses should operate. David Cole was no longer just an entrepreneur in the luxury market. He was now a disruptor of the status quo. As the days passed and the discussions with the influencers team continued, David held firm. The luxury market would adapt to Cole Atelier's values, or it would be left behind. The future of fashion, he was certain, would no longer be dictated by exclusivity, it would be built on inclusivity, respect, and integrity. He glanced out the window of his office, watching the city lights flicker to life as night settled in. The battle for change was far from over, but David knew this. The first victory had already been won, and he wasn't about to stop now. Days later, the decision had been made. David stood in front of the store, watching as a steady stream of customers walked through the door. The buzz from the press campaign had simmered down, but the real work was just beginning. His decision to stand firm on the values of Cole Atelier had paid off. The influencers team had come back, agreeing to align with the full vision he had for the brand. It was a quiet victory, but one that felt monumental in its significance. David had no illusions about the challenges that still lay ahead, but in this moment, he could see the seeds of change taking root. Maya stepped up beside him, a folder in hand. Mr. Cole, she said, I've just finished going over the latest reports. Sales are up 25% since the campaign launched, and we're seeing a significant increase in interest from new demographics, especially millennials and Gen Z. David smiled, but there was no sign of complacency in his eyes. Good. We're not just changing the conversation in luxury fashion, we're changing the consumer. It's not just about exclusivity anymore. People want to feel like they belong. Maya nodded. We've also received feedback from other brands in the industry. A lot of them are watching what we're doing closely. Some have even reached out about possible collaborations. David's face softened with a mix of pride and resolve. That's exactly what we need. Others in this industry need to see that this is the future. If they want to stay relevant, they will have to adapt to the times. It's no longer enough to have a pretty product. It's about having a purpose. He paused for a moment, looking out at the street again, the bustling city beyond a blur of movement. But we can't rest on this momentum. This is the moment we have to lean in even harder. The luxury industry is built on generations of exclusivity and prejudice. It will not change overnight. We have to stay vigilant and keep pushing. Maya's voice was steady. I'm ready, Mr. Cole. What's next? David turned to face her, a slight smile crossing his face. Next, we take Cole Atelier global. We've built something special here, but this vision needs to reach beyond this city. We need to change the way luxury is seen across the world. Maya nodded, eager to take the next step. I'll start putting together the expansion strategy. David walked toward the back of the store where the new campaign materials had been displayed on large screens. As he passed, he took a moment to observe the faces of the customers, some familiar, some new, all of them seemingly drawn to the space not just by the luxury of the products but by the way they were treated. This was the change he had fought for, and it was starting to feel like the reality he had always envisioned. It was not just about selling products anymore. It was about creating a new legacy. The city outside continued to pulse with energy. But inside Cole Atelier, David knew that they were building something that would last longer than the fleeting trends of the industry. They were shaping a new culture, one built on inclusivity, respect, and the power of authenticity. And as long as he stood at the helm, that vision would never waver. Weeks passed, and the momentum behind Cole Atelier only grew stronger. David's unwavering commitment to change had not only reshaped the store but had set a ripple effect in motion across the luxury fashion industry. Partnerships were growing, the brand's reach was expanding, and most importantly, the values that Cole Atelier had stood for from the beginning were now ingrained in every customer interaction, every design decision, and every strategy meeting. One afternoon, as David stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, watching the city breathe beneath him, Maya walked in with a report in her hands. "Mr. Cole," she said, "I have some exciting news. We've officially signed our first international partnership. We're expanding into Europe. Paris, London, and Milan are all on board." David turned to face her, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "That's exactly what we need," he said, his voice steady. "But this has never been just about business. This is about cultural change. We need to make sure we stay true to our message no matter where we go." Maya nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "I know. We've already made it clear to the partners that we will not compromise on the core values of the brand. They're on board with that. They believe in what we're doing." David's eyes softened, a hint of pride flickering behind them. "Good. That's the only way this works. If they don't believe in our purpose, then it's not worth doing." The door to his office opened and one of the review team members stepped in holding a tablet. "Mr. Cole, I just received the latest sales data. Our online platform is seeing a 40% increase in global traffic. The Cole Atelier message is spreading faster than we anticipated." David's smile grew wider. "I knew it would. The world is ready for a different kind of luxury, one that values humanity over exclusivity." He looked at the tablet and then back at Maya. "This is just the beginning. We need to stay ahead of the curve, keep innovating, and always stay true to our mission." Maya responded, "We've already started the groundwork for our next big move, expanding into the tech space. We're looking into creating an app that will allow customers to track not just their purchases, but the social impact of the products they buy. They'll be able to see how our values align with their own." David raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "That's a brilliant idea. It's time we fully integrate our message into every aspect of the customer experience." Maya smiled, knowing she had his approval. "We'll start working on the development. We'll make sure the app is not just functional, but also a tool for empowerment." David nodded, his expression serious once more. "Let's remember something, Maya. This is about more than just sales. This is about making an impact that lasts beyond us. We're setting a new standard, not just for the fashion industry, but for every industry that has ignored the need for true, meaningful change." As Maya left his office to continue with the plans, David stood still for a moment, allowing himself to absorb everything that had happened. His company had come a long way, but the journey was far from over. The world was changing, and with it, Cole Atelier was changing the face of luxury, one thoughtful decision at a time. He had not just created a brand, he had created a movement, and now it was his job to make sure that movement did not stop. Looking out over the city, he whispered to himself, "We've started something bigger than any of us, and I'm not done yet."